We're just getting recorded. Consent agenda, approve minutes of previous meeting, approve bills, and receive staff activity reports.
Move to approve.
Dave LaFontaine with a motion, Bill Lakeman with a second. Discussion, any changes, anything to be pulled out? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Okay, we're gonna risk an injury. Do we have anything there? I don't believe Lori was here. I don't think there's anything in land conservation. Extension is all right. Jason, you're okay?
Yeah, planning and zoning has nothing to report.
All right, so I'm gonna move because I'm gonna move the agenda item on economic development.
13.
Yeah, 13, which one is it? Let's start with the dump deal. Which one is that, Jason? I'm looking. Because Peter's gotta be involved in that. We'll move to 12. Discuss Cranberry Creek Landfill LLC proposed expansion and determine in Wood County will have a representative to serve on waste facility siting board. Who wants to take this, Jason or Peter? Jason? Gotta unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll start it off here if that's okay. I just have a few brief comments on it. In the packet, I did include a map that kind of shows where Cranberry Creek landfill is. I think most of you are kind of aware of that. It's pretty visible if you drive by. I guess the point of including the map that shows all the ownership was to kind of show that beyond the proposed expansion area for that landfill, Cranberry Creek does own quite a bit of land. I don't really think anybody likes the idea of having a landfill close by to them. It's always better to have it somewhere else away from you. But the reality is we have to have some place to put our waste. I feel Cranberry Creek has plenty of land for an expansion there. When they acquired that property years ago, I think there was the intent that they would expand out. Fairly certain that the DNR likes the idea, and other regulatory agencies like the idea of landfill expansions rather than having new landfills pop up, throughout the county or throughout the area. I think, we have been involved with landfill siting in the past, and I think Peter could probably speak to that in a little bit here. So we are somewhat familiar with having county involvement in location of landfill siting. I guess as far as the financial impact, I think there is some benefit to having the landfill close by, because when the garbage truck picks up your garbage and doesn't have far to drive, it ends up saving the taxpayers money on disposal of the garbage. But I think there's a benefit to having this landfill expansion take place here with additional capacity for the future. Also looking at that map, I'm not sure how clearly you can read that map there or how clear it printed off in your packet, but as you can see, there's not a lot of residences nearby, which is a benefit. I think if we were looking at a situation where there were close by residences and this expansion was going to butt up to them, I think we'd probably have some concerns and want to have a seat on the siting committee. Also, if we were looking at the location of a new site in the county, I think the county would like to have probably a seat on the landfill siting committee as well. In this particular case, I don't think it's of great benefit for the county to have a seat on that review board. I personally don't see, the benefit of expending county resources on that. But at this point here, I'll turn it over to Peter for some of his comments, their comments.
Map is on page 39 for the. Do you have anything, Peter, you want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the State Waste Facility Siting Board has to give local municipalities, including the county where the landfill is sited or going to be sited or expanded, the opportunity to form or join a local siting committee. You've got 60 days to do that, effective, I think, whenever the date of that letter is March 31st. So you've got 60 days to either join or forego that opportunity. The local siting committee has very limited jurisdiction on what it can address. And most of those things have to do with types of operational concerns, when they operate, noise levels, dust, signage, fencing, things of that nature. And so none of that seems to be an issue, as Jason was pointing out. There's a lot of things that people will often want with regards to a landfill, including parts of the tipping fee, and that's what happened last time, a lot of negotiations with regards to that, but that's not something you statutorily have the right to negotiate. So since there doesn't seem to be much issue with regards to these factors that the local siting committee can deal with, that in conjunction with the fact that a local siting committee sometimes will hire counsel to assist them in their negotiations, which can be a logical thing to do, but that can incur significant expenses that you would likely be responsible for. And so that was one of the big problems the last time. Those expenses were hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. The county ended up not having to pay any of it, but we did have to go to court, and I think it went to the Court of Appeals in regards to fighting off the attorney who's trying to get part of the funds from the county. So anyway, my recommendation is, unless you see something specific that you're looking for this local siting committee to be able to do that the county wants to weigh in on, to not recommend to the county board to have 2 members appointed to the local siting committee.
Okay, questions from the committee or to Jason or Peter on this issue? Peter and Jason and I talked about this previously. If the county, and I'm not promoting countywide zoning, but if we had countywide zoning, it might be appropriate for us to be there. But considering we've got zoning by municipalities here only, and previous history of this board with the county and what we can accomplish, I think. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Well, we really have no trouble with them as we are now. There was never no health hazard or anything with it. As it is, everything seems to be going pretty good with it as it is. So we have really nothing against them for evaluating any laws against us. I know it was an issue when we started because it was involved with it ourselves at that time. Yeah.
I've got a question, Peter. But Rapids, we don't know for sure. Rapids will have
They have the same opportunity
Yeah.
the county does to have a single member appointed, I believe it is.
Yeah. Or the towns that it's located. I believe this covers the part of Rapids and the town, right?
I think the expansion is just in one township.
Yeah.
And they have the right then to, if they want members on that local siting committee, to have 4 members.
It's the town of Siegel it is.
Yes, it's Town of Seagull.
Any other questions? I'll make the motion, Carly, that we accept the staff recommendation that the county doesn't, refuse it.
Doesn't see a need to, if I
Doesn't,
may,
county doesn't, or the seed committee doesn't see a need for representation on this board.
I'll second.
Okay, Ken Curry with the motion, Carly, Dave LaFontaine with a second.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jake, was it aye?
Correct.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, thank you. All right, the next issue is discuss ownership transfer of property to Buren licensee group. I guess we'll start. John, you want to introduce yourself, and Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Evenson. I'm the president of the Village of Buren.
And Mike Schoenholz is with us today as well. Mike represents the Buren licensee group. The reason we're here today is because Buren is requesting the support of Wood County relative to correcting a land conveyance, a land exchange that recently occurred primarily in the village of Buren. So I provided all of you a handout that provides the background on this. I'll have to ask for just some understanding. This project has been going on for over 18 years. There's thousands of pages of documentation. We've conducted virtually hundreds of meetings. We've spent millions of dollars to facilitate what has happened here. So the challenge to boil this down into a document that summarizes for you what happened and why we're seeking the support of Wood County is what that was a result of this document. So the facts are, for over 18 years, Buren's been working on this with the Buren licensee group, Consolidated Water Power Company, Classic Development, to facilitate a land exchange. I think in your packet there was a map showing the project area. It was a color map, and on that map, the burgundy areas represent just over 3 acres of property, and I think Jason's putting that map on the screen. Within those 3.14 acres, there's 26 lots. And for between 50 and 60 years, there's the depiction on the screen. Those rose-colored or burgundy, magenta-colored properties, there's 26 lots. Those lands were owned by Consolidated Water Power Company. Consolidated Water Power Company is a licensed hydropower provider. They're regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So over 18 years ago, Consolidated notified the leaseholders, 26 leaseholders of those lots, that they intended to force those leaseholders to vacate those properties. Over those 50 to 60 years, the leaseholders constructed cottages, homes, docks, piers, and various improvements on those properties. Consolidated owned those properties and leased those properties to those 26 leaseholders on a year-to-year lease. And Consolidated desired to have those properties vacated so that they could be utilized for public recreation, public access purposes.
His name is Jeff.
The Buren licensee group approached Buren, and together we've been working on an exchange to replace and to improve the public access in the area so that those Buren licensed properties could gain ownership of those properties, and instead we would create for Consolidated Water Power replacement public access. So those are the parties that have been involved highly: Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, Consolidated Water Power Company, the Army Corps of Engineers, Wood County, of course, Buren, Classic Development, and numerous consulting agencies. Our concern derives from the very last step of hundreds of steps that have taken place over the last 18 years, was the final conveyance of property when Consolidated gave ownership of the property to the licensee group. This was after all of those recreational features were constructed by Buren, numerous other land exchanges that had to precede this, the county allowing the movement of County Highway U off of the flowage shoreline into its current corridor. It's depicted on the map. One of the very last steps was for the licensed properties, those 26 lot leaseholders, to obtain ownership of the property. When Consolidated conveyed those properties just weeks ago, they didn't convey those properties to the shoreline. They conveyed the property to a 1036-foot elevation mark. Consolidated is basically maintaining ownership of the shoreline through that entire area of those licensed properties. That was never supposed to be the deal. For 18 years, all of these parties have been working together to facilitate a land exchange, allowing those leased property to become privately held to the shoreline. You know, I've got with me, and I didn't provide to you, a 48-page Federal Energy Regulatory Commission order. This order was issued in 2016. It restates an order that was issued in 2006, and again in 2008, and this is the most recent, in 2016. The Village of Buren is named in this order many times because of our involvement with this. The conveyance of property to the shoreline is noted in this agreement many times. So at the 11th hour, Consolidated Water Power made the decision to, instead of conveying property to these leaseholders who they've invested over $1 million with Buren, with Classic Development, Consolidated made the arbitrary decision to convey instead to the 1036-foot elevation and maintain a sliver of ownership of shoreline property, disallowing the licensed properties to gain ownership of the shoreline. Without ownership of the shoreline, they have limited control of the shoreline. And Consolidated also has detrimental dock permit language that they're issuing to the licensees, which basically allows Consolidated to cancel docks at any time for any reason without recourse. So because Buren has so much invested, millions of dollars invested in this, with the understanding that Buren would, the end result would, Buren would gain shoreline properties. Wood County had that understanding as well. Buren intends to go to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission with a filing and ask for intervention. Ask them to review this. Ask them to enforce the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission order and force Consolidated to correct that conveyance and to convey to the shoreline, high water mark shoreline, instead of to the 1036 elevation. As a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission filer, when we make that request, we would appreciate having the support of Wood County. We would like Wood County to join us in that request by making a filing supporting Buren's actions. We did act on a resolution at Buren level recently condemning the actions of Consolidated Water Power. And in that resolution, we stated our intent to pursue action with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, potentially the DNR, potentially the court system if necessary. So we feel it's a gross oversight or a mistake on Consolidated Water Power's part. I've been seeking correction on this for a couple of years to no avail. They know that Buren is likely going to go to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to seek a correction on this, and that's why we're looking for the support. I'm not going to pretend to know if that support should be in the form of a resolution or just the ability for your chairman to write a letter to file with FERC in support of Buren's actions. You know, that's really up to the committee and Peter, yourself as counsel. But I think it would be, we would appreciate the support of Wood County.
I don't see the DNR mentioned in this anywhere. We have places up north where they took the shoreline rights away from our cottage owners. And there's places in Portage County they haven't got the shoreline rights. They took that away because of improvements on them shorelines. There's cottage up north, they have to have a 2 or 3 foot buffer strip and they can't walk into the water, build a new docks or anything no more. They took that away from them. Are you sure the DNR is gonna allow this to use these shorelines? I don't see the DNR listed in there.
Consolidated Water Power Company is regulated primarily by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, by FERC, because of their hydro dams and their generation of electricity. Certainly in some areas, the DNR is monitoring shoreline and controlling shoreline. Consolidated Water Power Company, because of their FERC license, they're responsible to monitor the shoreline. They have to control what happens on the shoreline, regardless of shoreline ownership. there's numerous examples on the Buren flowage where private property owners own the shoreline. There's examples of where they own riparian rights. Shoreline regulation is very complicated, but our concern is the investments we've made with the understanding that the property owners would gain the shoreline ownership, and we would then enjoy shoreline valuation for taxation purposes. So I hate to make it sound like it's all about the money, but with all the investment that Buren made with that understanding, it's important for Buren and Wood County, because Wood County enjoys those tax revenues as well. We feel compelled to do everything possible to be sure that those valuations are maximized, that the licensees receive property that we've all been working toward, that reflects the understanding that we've been working for all these years, so that Buren and Wood County can enjoy maximum taxable values in the area, so we get a return on our investment. Wood County has a history of supporting this project. They've taken several steps over the years to support this project in allowing the county highway to move and for those recreational features to be created. So they've been one of several entities that have supported this project along the way. Our concern again is about this 11th hour change, this arbitrary change by Consolidated that limited the conveyance of property, excluding the shoreline, but instead to an elevation.
Are you sure that ain't grandfathered in though, if you have new property owners on there that ain't grandfathered in with Consolidated with that shoreline, that you have to follow the new rules
I
if
can
you?
comment on that.
If you would.
Yes, okay. I'm Mike Schulholz. I'm one of the managers of the Buren Licensee Group. From 2004, when we entered into our original agreement with the power company, to 2018, it was clearly understood that we were acquiring the land that we were leasing to the shoreline, and that we would have normal dock rights subject to Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources regulations. So the DNR has been in the picture all along, but we've spent $1.5 million to acquire that 3.13 acres of land. When the county agreed to allow the 1 mile section of road to be moved, the Buren Licensee Group and Plastic Development picked up 100% of that cost. That was part of our responsibility to make this happen, to make sure that the public didn't incur any costs from it. So we understood for 15 plus years we were going to be acquiring waterfront property. We would be going on the tax roll as waterfront property owners and paying property taxes accordingly. Right now, it's going to be considered to be water view property. As John said, this is not a requirement of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. In fact, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission specifically authorized the conveyance to the shoreline. The only thing that they restricted was that the power company reserve flowage rights on the property, which they have on all the rest of the properties around the Buren flowage. And in fact, the power company has what they call riparian rights on most of the rest of the properties around the flowage as well. But the people own waterfront property, and that's the basis of our concern, the basis of the village's concern. And I would just add to that if this was not a openly discussed and agreed upon decision to change to this way of doing things, it was unilateral on the power company's part.
Okay, before we go, Pete, I received this request through planning and zoning, or Jason and I did. The resolution from Buren. Since then, we've looked at all the information provided by Buren. I also have had conversation with Consolidated Water Power and Verso, and there's some grading with that. And I also talked to Gary Phillips, who is, I don't know if he's a de facto leader of the Buren Licensee Group. So there's been discussion. My objective here is not to be to judge or to offer stuff. If there's questions on those meetings, we can answer it, but go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. So, in talking recently to counsel for Quepco with regards to why they went or why they wanted to go with the 1036 versus the ordinary high water mark. The question was asked of them why, and they said the response was that was the preference of FERC, and they also indicated that either the village or the licensing group, and I believe it was the BLG, Beer and Licensing Group, hired a firm out of Washington, Troutman, Sanders, and so on, and that one of their responsibilities apparently was to try to communicate with FERC to see if they could change the 1036 to the ordinary high water mark or shoreline, and that the council for the BLG was told, no, that's not gonna happen, supposedly, and so FERC is the one who was the driving force behind this. And the county works with FERC periodically. We're not looking to irritate them, but we're also, want to be fair and so on. But if FERC is the one who's insisting on this, then it seems kind of silly to be asking them to change their thought on this, especially if you had counsel who's used to dealing with FERC, communicating with them, and FERC saying, no, we're not going to change.
I can comment on that.
And that's up to the chair.
Yeah, you could-
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
share that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We did in fact hire the Troutman Pepper law firm of Washington DC, who is a FERC expert legal firm, to look into this. And their response was that our position is compelling. They did talk to the FERC staff. The FERC staff was not willing to unilaterally insert itself into the process because they felt it was more of a matter between the power company and our licensee group. So they would not interject themselves into it. But some things that came out of it. First of all, the changes that Quipco made were made after the public comment process. When FERC went out on 3 different occasions for public comment in 2005 and again in 2006 and again I think in 2015, it was with the understanding that the land would be transferred to the water's edge. FERC, in their order, as John referenced, authorized the conveyance to the water's edge. There has never been anything from FERC to the contrary. Quipco went in with a boundary change request in 2016 that FERC gave them the option of either setting the new project boundary at the water's edge or at elevation 1036, which is the 100-year flood elevation. Quipco chose to go to the 1036 elevation. That did not have anything to do with where the land would be conveyed to us, at least from FERC's order standpoint. FERC's understanding to this day, as far as I know, is consistent with their FERC order that John referenced. We've never seen it to the contrary.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, please.
Briefly, huh?
I mentioned, I apologize, I know you have a busy agenda. I mentioned the 1036 elevation. There is a significance to that elevation. On that map, the light green area is new development. That's new residential development that's being managed by Classic Development. They're one of the partners in this project. It's FERC's policy to exclude new residential development from a FERC project area. That's exactly right, and to the left of that darker green area as well. So Consolidated did go through a boundary adjustment, and they adjusted the boundary of their project area, the entire Beer and Float project area, and the 1036 ended up being their boundary adjustment. That enabled that light green area to fall out of the project boundary for the for Consolidated Water Power Company's licensed project. Because that's the desire of FERC. But that had nothing to do with the previous 3 FERC orders for property that's already been developed that they had orders to convey to the shoreline. Consolidated used that 1036 to retain ownership of shoreline. We think that that's a mistake. The request we're making of FERC is simply a request for correction, review and correction. It's either gonna get upheld and they'll ask Consolidated to convey that remaining property, or it's gonna be denied. But, you know, we believe we have a good case, we've sought counsel, and, certainly Buren has standing, because we've invested a ton, and we've been a partner in this process for 18 years. So really, and I don't wanna put a damper on this project, what's happened up there is amazing. The public is enjoying just wonderful amenities that we've all worked hard to create. And Consolidated was part of that. But this last final step, we relied, when we made all those decisions to invest, we relied on the fact that these properties would become privately held properties, shoreline properties, generating that type of valuation, as did the licensees. So we're gonna make the filing request and hope for the best. We think we have a compelling case, and we'll see where it goes. And it'll be solely up to FERC in terms of whether they agree that these 3 FERC orders in 2006, 2008, and 2016 will stand as written.
Jason, did you fall asleep on me, or are you not online? You got something to say?
Ken Lance does, if you got a minute.
Jason Grunenberg?
Ken Lance is here, if I could make a comment.
Okay, Mr. County Board Chair, go ahead, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've been involved in this process since the start. I think I was in the original meetings when this process began. You know, my take on this is, as stated by the licensee group and by, you know, John Evenson, that was never part of the agreement. This was always to the water's edge. They had those rights. This was changed at the end. I find it hard to believe, actually, that, you know, this was solely a FERC determination. And because of the property values, some of the other issues that go on up there, I would personally have no problem just supporting that effort. We're not spending any money. We're basically sending a letter that says, you know, we support what really had been agreed upon for many, many years as this process evolved. So this was a curveball thrown in at the end. Again, I believe it was by Quipco and nobody else as that moved forward. I think their feet was held to the fire a little bit at the end. You know, it's kind of a sign this or else, and they have expended a tremendous amount of time and effort. So, you know, if it's just my take, and if Peter's there, I don't necessarily understand the legal part, but when I talk about, you know, keeping your word and doing what you say, that was never part of the agreement. And, you know, my take is, at least we ought to issue a letter of support if it doesn't cause us any legal problems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Now we haven't talked in legal, Peter has, but for the committee, the difference here is right now, there's this 1036 elevation, they're called water view. The license group, don't only have it to the edge of the water. The doc that talked about, without being judgmental, Consolidated Water Power takes a different view here. They're providing docks to these owners. They're gonna pay a fee, a license fee. I don't deny that they left out the part that it could be voided. But anyways, to get back, the benefit to the county here is taxes. If no way that anybody can say right now, when this property is assessed, that it'll be less if it's water view and more if it's to the water edge, that you have control. Right now, that's what we're talking about here. When it's assessed, is the county able to make more money in taxes or less money? Potentially less. My question from the start was, and that's why I talked to the licensee group, whether they favored this, because this is the first time in my life in the county board that taxpayers have come in and asked to raise their taxes rather than lower them. Now, I understand there's a benefit to them, but, so that's really what we're talking about here, is the impact to the county. Bill?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Let Bill talk, Lance, and I'll get to you.
I kind of have a different view on this. I know over $500,000 was spent by, George Meade on this with FERC. And this was, in my opinion, no last minute deal at all. This is what they were fighting for, was for that rights to have that. And another thing, I don't believe that the county board should now get involved in this, in supporting something that was not even near unanimous on the county board to approve this Buren project in the first place. I mean, it was 1 or 2 votes difference. And it ended up that Buren didn't pay their share back to the county. I just think it's a backdoor effort to say to FERC and those people that, well, you know, this was a mistake, this shouldn't happen. I think this is between those people, and I don't think this committee or its chairman, who basically lives in that district and represents that district, the county board, you know, it's tax dollars and money and stuff like that. I think this was made at the right time. I would not be in support of Wood County or this committee or the chairman writing a letter in support of that.
All right, thank you. Okay, Lance, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back and approach this from a little bit different aspect other than just property tax revenue. I deal with a lot of properties that the Wisconsin River Power Company or QIPCO are involved with, and I have seen numerous times, especially recently, where those pier rights have been vacated. They've not been allowed to be to continue generationally when ownership changes. And I've seen the value of some of those properties, especially along Petenwell and some of those, greatly diminished, if even making those saleable to some extent. People do not want to have to walk, 500 feet, 1,000 feet to a pier that may be licensed. So, I see this as a benefit. Like I said, I sat in a lot of those meetings. I don't think that was what was ever negotiated. And like I said, I just hate to see those rights ever taken away unilaterally, because I have seen it, personally. So that's my 2 cents. I'll let you guys continue and I will shut up. Thanks.
All right, so I stand corrected. There's tax money in this and potential shoreland recreation.
Well, and real estate transfer tax money too, Ken, as you go to the sale of these properties and the ability to transfer ownership.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Legally, the county can take whichever action it decides, either to support this or not support it. You can go the resolution route, you can go the county board chair route. If you're going the county board chair letter route, then the county board chair writes a letter saying either what he thinks, or that the committee has gone on record in support of this, or that the county board has gone on record. So it depends upon where it ends up at. But so you guys can do, or you folks can do what you want with regards to that. I do need to leave unless there's any questions.
I got one question. Lance, you're on line?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
You're willing, so the options are just presented to the committee was a resolution to the county board or a letter from the county board chair. That you would do that?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at it this way. I mean, I don't like to do anything that's contrary to the wishes of the board, but I'm more than willing to, to move forward in that direction. I don't think we're sticking our neck out greatly here. We're just saying, we support the efforts because I think it's beneficial to the county in the long run. FERC ultimately, as was stated before, is going to make the decision, and they're going to make that decision based on all the information provided at the time. And, I always say I might make a different decision the next day had I had all the information that was available on that day. So, as they move forward, there's nothing here that's going to happen illegal or out of the realm of ordinary. It's just going to be taking all the information into account and saying that, the county supports, the effort of those people to retain those or to get those rights, which I thought originally were negotiated. So yeah, short answer is, I'd be more than willing, but I'd never like to just go this alone, contrary to board's, tacit approval, if nothing else.
And I'm not suggesting that, Lance, this would be, I myself don't support, I don't think a resolution is the way to go with this, partially because we've struggled with language on it. This what I would propose, if you would write a letter in support of this, committee could meet before the county board and yea or nay to approve the letter or not. So I'm not saying, that's a discussion that could be had here. I'm looking for giving options to the committee.
Yeah, I'm more than willing to do that.
I would move that the seed committee request the county board chairman write a letter in support of his position of getting the change from the 1086 land level to their rights to water level, water.
Carly, did you got that?
Yes.
All right. Do I have a second on the floor?
I'd second that.
Okay, Jake with a second. So Dave with a motion. So that everybody understand the motion, what's gonna go on here. Discussion on the motion. Bill?
So, Mr. Chairman, did I understand from maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago when corporate counsel was still here, that a third option might be for corporate counsel to write the letter? Did I understand that right, or?
That was kicked around, the way I heard it was through either the chair of the seed committee or the county board chair would do it. I don't know as I remember Peter writing the letter.
If he would have stayed, I would have asked.
Yeah, he had a court, he's gotta be in court at 9:45, that's part of our, not rush today, but conflicts.
So if the chair were to write this letter, it would be for the FERC to, for the first time, review and correct what's been done?
Correct.
Has the FERC ever intervened before?
Absolutely, there's a FERC
Is that
intervention.
06, 08, and 16, is that?
Well, those were all orders of what had been proposed by Consolidated Water Power to FERC for what should occur. But after the fact, there is a dispute process with FERC, there's an intervention process with FERC, and as a government entity, as a person, you can make a request to FERC. As a government entity, we're hoping that FERC takes a little more notice to Buren, because Buren is very much involved in this, and being a government entity, we're hoping that they take a look at it honestly and review the language of those three orders and make a determination that Cook's conveyance to the elevation instead of to the shoreline was an oversight on their part, and enforce a correction. So really, our request is gonna be for a FERC review and intervention, and we're hopeful that Wood County support might help our request. And really,
Mr. Chairman?
that Wood County supports in the form of a resolution or a letter, I don't think it matters with FERC, just.
Go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, I think this is to Supervisor Lightnum's question a little bit. Anytime I compose a letter like this, I certainly do it in concert with Peter to make sure that we're not, crossing any lines, to make sure it's reviewed. And all we're looking at here is asking them to take a second look at this, because, like I said, having sat through this for 18 years and through those meetings, I don't believe that was ever part of the negotiation where those rights would have been subverted. So, we're doing nothing more than saying, hey, we'd like you to take a look at this. And I think I would, any taxpayer in this county, I think that we owe them, in effect, that right. So I would do that with Peter, his review. This is kind of a one-page, take a second look, please. We support Buren's efforts.
And I'm looking for the right words here, Lance. I think I could offer to have a meeting before this committee can review that letter before the county board. whether they vote to support it or not support it, that'll happen at that meeting. Just, before the county board. Is there anybody in the committee that disagrees with that thought? All right, Bob.
I just have one issue left, because in the country, we have to live under different laws than they do in the town. And that gets me kind of upset, because in the country, we can't do anything with the shoreline. We had to lose a lot of acres of crops, a pasture for our cattle, because we had to stay away from the wetlands, and we can't get involved. These people, all now, they have fertilizer from that lawn can run down into the Wisconsin River without a buffer strip. Is that true now, that the people that buy this land can just cut the grass to the water and run on the lawn what they want and let it run into the river? Is this right?
Well, I hesitate to answer questions, but in this case, the county doesn't control the shoreline in any village, or, the village of Buren controls the shoreline on that deal. So there are regulations that are gonna be enforced. But, all right, we got a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion or questions on the motion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak quick.
Go ahead, Jason.
I just want to affirm what you just said. Even though it is a village, it's not really considered rural as compared to many parts of the county. They are subject to shoreline and zoning regulations that are overseen by the DNR in the village. I guess, I haven't spoke much on this. I was trying to get in there earlier, but couldn't hit the mute there quick enough. But one thing I want to say too, as far as from a regulatory perspective, my office deals with floodplain regulations and things like that. And really, whether that project boundary is 1036 or it's a shoreline, from a regulatory perspective, it makes no difference. So I don't see there being any problem for that boundary going to the shoreline. One thing too, it's really hard to follow what happened over the course of 18 years. And over the last few weeks and conversations I've had, I've tried to determine if there was that, changeover from the shoreline boundary to the 1036. And I do feel there was at some point in time. I think the original intent was to go to the shoreline, as been stated previously here. And I think you're making the right decision by keeping it to the shoreline there if you can. As far as values of property, it will affect values if it's at 1036. How much? Probably not a whole lot, but I think over time, cumulatively, it will have a big impact on the tax base of the village and the county. So I just want to affirm that I think the committee's on the right track here.
Okay, so we got a motion on the floor. Anybody want to understand the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Jake with an aye. Motion is unanimous. And I've thought about this. It was brought up that I do represent the village of Buren. I also, everyone should know I live to Buren. I don't have any connection to any of these groups other than I know them, some of them personally. I have no financial interest in any of these developments, other than that I have as a citizen of Buren. One thing I want to, and I tried not to be judgmental during this deal, but I guess talking to the other groups, I guess I would, this is to John, I don't know if I want to say I'd be careful, but if FERC would void the agreement and kick it back to Consolidated Water Power, is it possible that they could return to their initial deal to get off the property? I mean, I would talk to your attorney about that, to make sure that you don't cause harm to our residents in
That's a valid point, Mr. Chairman, and frankly, Consolidated's been threatening that for several years, but if they did that, they would have to give back everything that they've been given. They've been given a lot of property through this process. They basically end up owning all of the recreational features that Buren built. And so for them to undo this, we don't believe there's a way. And if they did, they would end up giving back everything that they've received, which benefits them for their FERC license. their FERC license requires them to provide recreational opportunities on the flowway.
Right. Just
So-
one of my conspiracy theories.
Well, no, it's
That I think around.
it's a valid question, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Now, so I understand this committee's gonna take a look at the letter. Will that letter then be part of an approval process by the county board that same day? Or not, or is?
I lost my legal counsel, but can
Okay,
you answer that, Lance?
I can't. I don't know what what the answer is. Like I said, it's, I probably have the authority to draft any letter I feel like drafting, but I'd really like the support of the board. When I'm speaking on behalf of the county, I'm not speaking just personally. So,
Right.
whether, I know the committee certainly could approve. It'd be nice to have the whole board approve.
If there's anything needed further from me, Mr. Chairman, let me know.
Alright.
If you would like my presence at future meetings regarding this matter, I'd be
Alright.
happy to do that.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your time today.
okay, thank. All right, Carly, county board is on the 20th of April. We want a meeting scheduled before county board. And you'll have to talk to Jason, or maybe I'd have Jason do this. Jason, you have your staff, because the submitting of an agenda will become through your office.
Sounds good. Yeah, have my
All right.
staff take care of that.
Okay. All right. Anything else? So we're gonna go to economic development with Jason. He's gonna get out of here in an hour and 10 minutes. Your first one, Jason, is review correspondence from Wisconsin County Forest Association regarding investment opportunities in consolidated cooperative. I'll give you 5 minutes.
Yeah, it sounds good. That's all I need. If you all refer to page 53 in the packet, you probably saw a letter from the Wisconsin County Forest Association. And what they're really looking at doing right now is supporting what's called the Consolidated Cooperative. And that's a group that's looking at purchasing the Verso Mill that was shut down this past summer. So it's no secret that the Consolidated Cooperative has been formed. I think there's been some write-ups in the paper regarding that, providing updates along the way where they're at. That project keeps on moving forward. That board is, or that cooperative has officially formed. And one of the reasons that group is formed is they really need to see Wisconsin Rapids Mill up and running again. Because what happened when the mill shut down, pretty much a lot of the forestry operations in the state shut down as well. It also really drastically affects county forest land. So what we're seeing right now is you're seeing people that are trying to manage property, including counties, that are having a difficult time doing that because there is a cost to harvesting the timber. And there's really no market right now for the purchase of the timber. So that cooperative is moving forward right now with the purchase of the Verso Mill. And also, I believe it's a Park Falls Mill. With a purchase, it's obviously a very, very big purchase. I don't know really what we're talking as far as real numbers, what that could look like. It's a very big number. They understand, the county foresters understand that if those mills aren't up and running, that the forest industry and forest management in the state is really going to suffer. So they see a great value into having a demand created for the forest products in the state. What this letter does, that was sent to the county, Wood County, I believe 29 other counties that have county forest land, what this letter is looking for is some kind of idea of willingness of counties to participate in borrowing for the purchase of those mills. So the reason I brought this to the committee is it was sent to Wood County here. I thought the seed committee, since it deals with economic development, was an appropriate committee to at least view this letter. I guess if you want to formally respond to it, that's up to the committee. I also did talk to Chad Schooley from Parks and Forestry and asked him to take it to his oversight committee as well, because forestry is under their department. So with that, I think I'm bumping up to my 5 minutes here, and I'll turn it back to the chairman.
Questions from the committee on this item?
Just a comment on it, is I read through that, and I think it's a worthwhile effort to purchase the mill for the benefit of all the counties and all the forests and for the industry. I would have a suggestion is that for all of the counties, if they could talk to that group, that they would levy like a percentage of the products that are harvested from all of the different forests, county, private, or whatever, they go to the mill. A 1% fee or something like that, which would go to support that organization, so they could have a source in which to get rid of their product, sell their product. You know, if they had somewhere 1 to 10%, I don't know what percentage. Looking at it, I see that their liking would request that we provide as a county a certain amount of money, but we don't know, say if we gave $10,000 for this economic development, would the next county that has more or less force would have an equal percentage? So I would think the fair way would be to assess a fee on the products that are sent to the mill, that are harvested.
I hadn't thought of that. You got that idea, Jason, in your head? But
Yeah, I
Dave's
do.
talking- All right, that's a different bent on. Any other questions? This is gonna be an ongoing deal. There was an article in the paper on this. They're looking for, obviously, funding. They're looking, I don't have a number. I've never met with them. The only other correspondence I had was from our forester in Wood County. He sent me an email on how important forest lands are to Wood County. So this is something we'll have to see how quick this moves, you know. They say, according to the paper, they're in negotiations with the bank that is selling the mill.
How much money do we pay to support the farmers? We're losing them every day. Why should we pay to support the mill when we don't support the farmers? That business too, that's way bigger business in the county than the mill is. And we don't support the farmers. We support the mill, but we don't support the farmers. Everything in the city's together.
So we're supporting over 1,000 for the local community. Talking about supporting the farmers, I have nothing. The farmers' land is taxed less than what city property is. If you want to get into an argument about it.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about this, I'm sure. Bring your wallets when they. All right, second one on the update is update on rural broadband grant application submitted to the public submission in December 2020 in cooperation with Hilbert Communication. That's our ongoing broadband grant request. There's another 5, Jason.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just want to include this as an update to the committee here, because I'm not sure if the committee heard that both of the grant applications were successful. I just want to commend everybody that was involved with that, pulling it together in such a short amount of time, especially Marianne Lippert for taking the lead on working with letters of support and the group of supervisors that were involved with that, as well as the people involved from rural Wood County that put that grant together, and also Hilbert Communications for really being a good partner on this project. One thing I want to say is, we had a lot of competition in that round of grants. There were 124 submitted. I believe the Southwest Wood County grant scored number 9 as far as overall points in eligibility, and the remainder of the county, the second grant, scored number 9. Out of a total of 58 approved applications, and there's a total of $28 million given out towards projects. So I was really proud to see that we not only got the grants, but we ranked so high in our grant applications. So going into this, I was a little skeptical if we had much of a chance of gaining the grant funding, but we really pulled it off. I guess the one thing right now, I'm not gonna go into too many details, that the county's gonna have to consider is, our commitment to the project. In the grant award, Wood County, or the PSC, gave out $1 million to Hilbert Communications. Hilbert is going to invest about $3 million, and Wood County agreed prior to the application process that we would provide $1 million in loans. We haven't gotten to the point yet, or I haven't, to really discussing that with any people, how we do that, but I'm sure people are talking about that and the need to kind of get together and figure that out in the next few months here. And I don't know if Lance has anything to add to this. I know you've been quite involved with this as well.
Sure. Well,
Go ahead, Lance.
no, I was just say Ken sat in the meeting yesterday as well at the operations committee. I think there's a lot of options here. We're waiting to see what the governor's going to do with the 3.2 billion he has, because broadband's at the top of his list. We're also looking at about $14.1 million coming in to be used for projects like this. So my guess is that this is not money we're going to have to borrow. This is money that's going to come to the county. We just don't want to expend any of the 14.1 million on broadband if the governor's going to give additional dollars specifically for broadband, which would allow us to use that 14.1 in other areas and arenas. So it's a little bit waiting for the pieces to fall in place to find out what the sideboards are on what the allowable areas in which we can expend those monies. But all in all, I don't think this is going to create any options for us to take on additional debt. I think we're going to be able to pay this directly out of funds that are coming to the county.
And while it was discussed yesterday at operations, we're gonna have to see if that money was pigeonholed, if it's specific items that it's for. I guess I wanna bring up, this is kind of a caution to the committee that we keep piling stuff on planning and zoning on our economic development staff, and that's probably another long-term deal we're gonna have to look at, is how we start handling these different projects in the future, but that's a future agenda item. BC is consider release of 2021, and I have one other question, Jason. The grant money was 1.3 or 1.5?
My notes here, it was just over $1 million.
Yeah.
Just over $1 million of grant funding from PSC. One thing I will say, I did sit through the Public Service Commission meeting where they talked about approving the grants, and what really helped our grant applications was the county backing those projects up with funds and having lots of support for those projects. There were applications that actually came in from parts of the state that had no letters of support and no county funds in them, and most of those weren't funded. So.
All right, so once in a while, a resolution makes a difference, right?
Yes.
All right, we're on C, consider release of 2021 grant requests for the town of Grand Rapids, Connecting Trail system and signage.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I can maybe give a brief update on this. Grand Rapids is not present today because they're not quite ready to request the funds. I got a brief update from them a couple weeks ago, and right now they're working with the city of Wisconsin Rapids on an agreement that would allow them to use a piece of right-of-way for that trail. So they will be back at a later date to make that request for the release of funds.
Okay, so that's all the action we have to take on that for now?
Yes, there's no action needed today on that.
All right. D is review 2021 funding application for Central Wisconsin State Fair in Marshfield.
Mr. Chairman, I can provide a little background on this as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. Is Dale Christensen here today in the meeting?
Not yet.
Okay. Then we may want to defer this one to later, but what I can do is maybe give a little bit of background here, why an application looks like this. So last year, I think there was some desire to get some more formality put in place regarding the junior fair funding that we give out. It was decided by the committee to maybe move that more to look like an economic development application. And with that, we have, you know, in black and white on paper, what the request looks like, a breakdown of the expenditures and, you know, explanation of what the return on investment is and things like that. So this was the first year that we decided to do that. This application kind of comes in after the fact because their funding was approved last year in the budget. My thought was that this year, have the committee review this application. Hopefully you'll like what you see there. And if you have questions, Dale will be in later to respond to those questions. And then my thought was too, that if the committee does approve this application after the fact, that we release those funds at a later date, but prior to the fair, the Central Wisconsin State Fair. That way they have that money to work with prior to the fair. I know in the past there was discussion on, you know, do we give them part of the money early in the year, part late in the year? I think for everybody, it would probably be easier just to have them make one request, provide an update, and do one release of funds. So that's kind of what I identified as a process this year. A little bit, the timing's a little bit off though, because the idea of having them go through this process came about really after the budget was adopted last year.
So Dale was supposed to be, I mean, I guess there was no, I mean, we appropriated the money for 2020 and there was no fair because of COVID. So I guess my question, I should have asked this yesterday, is what's Dale gonna report on? What's gonna happen this year?
Yeah, you know, my thought was today we would just go over the application, and then next month we could go over with the report, unless he could do a verbal report today. And just
Okay,
kind of,
all right. So the request is on page 58. Is there any question from the committee? Dave, go ahead.
I'm looking at one item here that increased from $3,700 to $11,000 in labor costs. Why?
You don't expect me to answer that, do you?
No. No, but I guess
Okay,
I'd like to see the question
All right,
for
yeah.
Dale.
Yeah.
Why such an increase? Everything else looks like it's pretty much with a little bit of an increase from what the 2018-19 costs were. But why the labor cost?
I mean, I'd be struggling to answer it. I mean, since Dale has taken over as the fairgrounds manager, he certainly increased fees, and, you know, I don't know, that would have to be answered by him, but, you know, but he certainly reorganized how the fair is operated.
There's an
So-
asterisk that pertains to the bottom of the report there. I don't know if that answers, you know, your question or not.
So Jason, get this right. We're looking at this, the report, the request today, and that he's supposed to be here today or next month?
he said he would be here today. I just corresponded with him 2 days ago and sent him the meeting agenda and location and time. So I anticipated he would be here. He said he would be in the area. So I think he was doing other things. So maybe he got held up at another.
All right, okay, so is there any other questions? I mean, the question been asked right now will have to be answered by Dale. We're talking, the money amount in this is 32,000, right?
I believe so.
32 or 45, what's the bottom line?
32 is all we ever got.
32 is the
Yeah,
money
that's
the
the most we
county
ever got.
for this part of it.
And you know, there's talk about 47 and 48,000, they run the junior fair, so we still have to take 16 of our own, so.
All right. Next item, Jason, is E, North Central Regional Planning Commission update.
Okay, I'll just give a brief update on that. Okay. Yeah, so some of the things we're working on right now is one of the projects they're going to help us out with this year is they're going to do a return on investment study for ATV and UTV recreation in the county. I know in the past few years when we made investments into that infrastructure and things like that, there's been some questions from the board on if we're getting anything in return. I strongly feel we will see a return on investment, but we'll not really know until we have that study done. So that's one thing we've been kind of having a conversation with them about in the last few weeks here. And our hope is to get that study going this summer. So by the end of the year, we'll have an idea of what kind of benefits to the county that recreation has. Another project that we're working on with them is the bike and pedestrian plan update for Wood County. Our current plan is, I want to say it's over 20 years old now. So it's still somewhat relevant in some cases, but very outdated. We really want to have that plan updated so we can focus, infrastructure investments in certain areas rather than trying to accommodate bicyclists everywhere in the county, on every county road and things like that. So we just met, just met yesterday, and we're working on a timeline now for that project and trying to figure out what kind of oversight group we're going to have working on that project. One thing I would ask is if you know people that would like to serve on an oversight committee, like a working committee to help that project along, just contact me or Adam in my office. So those are probably the two bigger projects that we're working on right now. I feel like I'm missing something else there, but one other thing too, they're actively moving forward with the regional recovery plan, and that was, I believe, federally funded. And I serve on that committee that's working on that plan right now. Looks like that'll be done in about a year.
I got a question, Jason.
Yes.
Is North Central involved at all with this deal with the mill sale? I mean,
they're not involved with the mill sale. They're involved with trying to, a grant application has been submitted in cooperation with the city, the chamber, the county, to get some economic development administration funding into Wisconsin Rapids to help mitigate the negative impacts of the mill closure. So that funding wouldn't necessarily be used for the mill site, but it would be used for other impacted areas in the downtown and Wisconsin Rapids. So our hope is that grant application will receive final approval. For what I understand, it's a pretty long review and approval process getting something done with the EDA, but we're very hopeful that we'll receive that help.
all right.
Mr. Chairman, Ray Bosford, Village of Port Edwards. Can I comment on Jason's bike trail?
Sure can.
Yes, sir. So, Jason, just make sure that I would offer that the efforts that we're doing with the Heart Trail Network, the signage that you guys have already funded for us with the Buren, Grand Rapids, Saratoga, Port Edwards, and Nakusa. Definitely, I think this needs to be synchronized so we're not missing an opportunity here. And whatever we talk about when it comes to signage, as well as bike trails and hiking trails and the network we're trying to build in Wood County. Mm-hmm. I would just like not to lose the efforts that we've come this far over these past few months moving forward.
You don't know it yet, Ray, but I volunteered you to be on that working group. So
well, there you go. Thank you, sir.
I haven't give you a call yet.
All right, no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ray is the administrator from Port Edwards. All right, and that's what you get for opening your mouth. You get it pointed to another.
I get it pointed. Yep. Yeah, you got it. Thank you, though.
Okay. Consider resolution. This for Jason. You ready?
Yeah. And
Consider resolution to adopt the READY plan for Wood County. So I know we had a conversation yesterday. You're real busy at home, so you didn't have time to do your resolution, right?
That's no excuses. It just didn't get done.
Okay,
I guess.
well, that's kind of tongue in cheek. So we talked about this yesterday. I don't see a problem, especially now we've got a meeting scheduled before county board. I don't think we need a lot to, once the resolution's put together, we can approve that put it in the packet for the board in April and have it approved at that meeting prior to the county board? Does anybody in the committee see a problem with that? Jake, I don't hear you. Bob shaking his head, yeah.
Shaking my head, I don't have a problem.
Yeah. All right. So you think you could have that ready before to submit to county board, Jason?
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward resolution. It shouldn't take too much time. It's just a matter of
Okay.
dedicating the time for that. So it'll be in the pack and be ready for day of county board.
And this, I'll give a little bit of pat on the back to Jason and Nancy. I don't know if Nancy's on there, but this, we've utilized, and the reason this comes up about how much Jason is doing and Nancy is, we constantly, other committees have filed other work onto these, especially these two from our committee, so they are really busy all the time, and they're getting a lot done. They're just not getting everything done in a timely manner, but. All right, is that it on Ready?
That'll be it. And thanks for the kind words.
Nancy, you have anything? Are you on or not?
Don't see her.
All right.
I have a question.
Sorry,
Okay,
I am on. Took a little bit to get the mute off, since I have two screens going here right now. I think that it would be helpful to both of us if we had a special economic development meeting in the near future to talk about how to prioritize and roll out the plan, because there are oodles of subcommittees that could be ongoing, but I think it's going to exceed the capacity that Jason and I have to facilitate these meetings and really move everything forward. And then on top of that, there's a lot of money coming down the pike from the federal government that could help to fund some of our initiatives, particularly broadband and maybe some of the energy projects. So if we could sit down with the committee at some point and hash through how we want to go about implementing and what your priorities are, that would be extremely helpful on my end. I'm trying to keep all the balls in the air as is Jason, but sooner or later they're going to start dropping, and it kills me to watch funding opportunities pass by and not know how aggressive to be about some of getting, proposals put together and that sort of thing. That's all I have.
I've got point well taken. You have been sending multiple emails on different opportunities. Those are going, what's your chain email look like? Is it just to the Ready group or?
No, well,
there's gotta be.
Sometimes it goes to the Ready group, the round table. A lot of them go out to all of the municipal clerks too, if it is something that would be of interest to our villages, cities, or towns. And then there's also a listserv for those involved in agriculture that have their own listserv. So if it's ag related, or could be, it also goes to them.
All right. And we'll talk to Jason on the staff report about potentially what's going to happen in the future as far as staff. So
Sure.
coming back to the office, that's what I mean.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Dave.
I just have a question on that. Making an assumption that if we're going to approve that resolution at our April 20th meeting, it will also be at the county board, will be submitted to the county board. We were talking about a ready presentation to the county board. Is that all going to take place at that April meeting?
Did you hear that, Nancy?
I did. I'm not sure if I'm doing it or if Jason's doing it, but someone will do it.
We'll figure it out.
It's a special order of business at the April meeting, and there will be either Nancy or Jason or both of them will.
It's gonna be on the agenda
Yeah.
for that.
It's on the agenda as a special order of business.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Who's
Lance.
Lance?
Lance.
You got?
Yeah,
All right.
just for the committee's sake, and Jason and Nancy both, the chairman, Ken, and I spoke yesterday, and, you know, we realize the amount of work that's being pushed your way, part of that because of grant opportunities, money coming into the county. And I certainly realize that we may have to continue to utilize some contract labor to get some of those done. We have some people who have expertise in grant writing and facilitating these. And I think it makes absolute sense to leverage and maximize those opportunities. And, you know, I'll use the example, you know, at a very small fee, Marianne Lippert ran through this, you know, broadband issue, put all those groups together, kept us in contact. You know, we may look to use those types of opportunities again going forward. And I think the chairman was, I know he's in agreement with me that Nancy and Jason have been, you know, kind of thrown under the bus on some of this stuff, and that we are gonna have to provide additional help to get some of these done. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do have about 26 years of grant writing experience, but any additional help is great.
Gotta remember, there's only 24 hours in the day. But I tried to get my wife to work at night, but she wants to sleep. All right. So we're back up. Let's finish off your private sewage, Jason.
Nothing really to report for private sewage, but I do want to say our new staff person passed the certification, so he's now Scott Custer, so he's now able to do inspections in the county for system installs, and that'll greatly help our office staff out as we move into construction season here.
So we got two people that are certified, or three?
We have
Adam?
three. We have two that are active day to day, and then Adam in the office is the backup in case we run into a situation where the primary two aren't available.
And just for general, our permits are up this year or down, or?
I really haven't checked to see where they compared to last year. It's still kind of early. I think in another month we'll probably have a better idea how we're trending. My prediction is we'll probably hold similar to what we had last year. My one concern is the cost of building materials right now. I think that'll probably deter or push people back a little bit as far as new construction or improvements.
Yeah, I agree. Land, any question on private sewage? Land records, I know Paul is trying to it sounds like he's got a meeting set up for the end of April.
Yes. So we'll have a land information council end of April. We're trying to meet more on a quarterly basis now to engage the land information council more.
Okay. And county surveyor, select a licensed professional land surveyor to complete maintenance on 206 public land survey system section corners. I thought we did that last month. Oh, you told me that. We did that last month.
We did. It was my error. I didn't pull it off of there. But the contract is signed and moving forward.
All right, we did a pretty good job. It's 10:30 and you got a meeting at 11, right?
Yeah, so a little time to kill here.
All right, is there any questions? Jason leaving in a half an hour? I kind of this, but we might have a new record here. All right, let's go back up to, you have any questions, Jason, or comments? Any other comments?
No, I just appreciate you allowing us to move forward through all the items quickly today, and sorry I couldn't be there. Hopefully be in person shortly.
It's what he's taught. What he's gonna attend is a pre-job on the solar. That is starting now. The land clearing that is the start of the construction, right?
Correct, correct.
That's to take place in the next couple months here, where they're gonna clear the land for the solar project. All right, let's go to land conservation. I said Lance is down sweating in Florida right now, so he left me in charge of land conservation.
Shane, not Lance.
Or Shane, he should change his name. He got mad at me the other day because I called him a different name.
I think we called him
Yeah.
Sean and he's, what's Shane?
He could change his name, but
Lance
Review
wanted
act-
me in Florida.
review action on resolution to extend free countywide testing for nitrates until funding is used. This, Dave LaFontaine, Carly with a motion, Lightman second. This was taken to operations yesterday and was passed. So is there, I believe it's in the packet, right?
I believe it is.
Yeah, then the budget, it's on page 32. Is there any questions or comments on that? It's to use up we continue the testing of the wells. I do have some more maps if anybody's interested in that, of the testing. And we'll get this is one you're gonna do in concurrence with us.
Correct.
That's what we've done so far. So is there any other, Bill?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as soon as you get back to your chair, I do want to just briefly comment on this, and I know I've talked to a couple people in the last several days, it came to my attention last Thursday, but so much of what we've done over the past 6-7 years has been centered in extreme southern Wood County and the town of Port Edwards and problems there. But in the last month or so with the TriStar cable on Highway 10 Auburndale, we may want to concentrate some of this nitrate testing in other parts of the county. And then Thursday of last week, I got a call from a resident along Kellner Road, just east of Wisconsin Rapids, about a potential problem there. So, so much of this effort had been delegated to just, I guess, that pink color that you're looking at on the map. But we may have more county-wide issues to deal with as time goes on. And so I think this is really a good thing. Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to alert the committee that there's gonna be more to come before them.
Well, the only issue I'm hearing from some people, you got these people with the city water, the cities are doing the job to keep their water good, and they're paying for these programs for the rural areas, where you probably weren't responsible for this trouble. And we're using all county money from the city people that are guaranteed their clean water from the city to pay for this work in the rural areas. And that, I hear a few issues about that, so.
I had a comment yesterday about that. I guess it's not, I don't know if it'll help the deal. I mean, I live in a municipality, I pay a sewer charge and I pay a water charge for my water, So you could make an argument, I'm paying twice, because I pay a monthly charge and it's about. But I still think this type of testing is more to raise public awareness that it's important to test, have your water tested. If you're in a municipality, it happens by regulation. In rural areas, and 85% of Wisconsin water is provided through wells wells working rural. And you're on your own when you're in a rural setting. I don't think most people they understand it, I think, but they don't appreciate that it's, they're on their own, they run their own utility. And that, especially that, and also in their septic system. And it's not only protecting yourself, it's protecting your neighbors and the public in general. So, I mean, that's where that's my spiel on it.
I was thinking with this, with solid waste, though, them programs are supposed to pay for themselves without taking money from the taxpayer.
No, I don't see the idea of $10,000 on this well testing resolution originally a year and a half ago when we're doing it was to pinpoint at least 10 wells in every township in Wood County. Right now, I wouldn't support increasing pre-testing. We've got what I think we should do, and I've said this many times as the committee, we've got to somehow increase public awareness that it's important to test. So I got a motion on the floor. Is there any other on the resolution? It's a budget reconciliation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimous. And as long as you brought it up, Bob, here's Ken Curry's testing for this year from Buren. So it's got all the, it exists. It isn't anything I did. The village does it, it's part of their job, so. And I also brought up, Trent sent this to me, there was a letter, and let's see, that's on page 33. We had a resolution, I don't know when that was 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, it sounds right.
So I guess somebody pays attention to it. Sheboygan County Planning and Resource Agriculture and Extension Committee to Governor Evers reinforcing Wood County's resolution, which recognizes the partnership of the 4 long-established statewide groups concentrating on the main goal of enhancing water quality throughout the state of Wisconsin. So sometimes the resolution, maybe doesn't get action, but other people recognize it.
Well, see, this is a discussion, my opinion now, but my nephew was home, he's in Madison, he lives in Milton, he was home on Sunday. I asked him about these resolutions, he said the House passed them, but the Senate got stalled because of COVID. Then he was starting to tell me, if it's nice Monday morning, I'm gonna mow my lawn, because he says, it's really green because I put a double the fertilizer on in winter that I don't have to put on in summer, that it burns my lawn, but I keep adding in summer. Now, this man passed these resolutions, and there's no bearing, you're never gonna have him have a green lawn. The only way we're gonna stop that is to take the fertilizer off the market. So these people in Madison that passed these resolutions, are they like him? Putting the pressure on the farmers when they got to have the green lawns? That's my.
I think
we're
I think all of us could appreciate there's more than one cause of our water quality in Wisconsin. It's not
how many people
not farmers alone.
Right. I mean that's what happens. How many people in the town are going to abide by this?
Okay. All right. So we got our committee, Citizen Groundwater Committee group.
Yeah, I can report on that, Mr. Chairman. So this is a report on the Monday, March 15th meeting. Our primary speaker was Matt Kruger. He's the head of Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation. And he talked about this very Sheboygan County reference to our resolution of several months ago. The topic that he spoke on was coming together in support of clean water and resilient farms. it's the feeling of those four groups that you can have both, that you just have to work together. And I think the thing that was most significant about what he said, well, there's two things. First of all, he said that we're the only state, Wisconsin is the only state that uses county conservation delivery. That in other parts of the United States, it's by state districts. And I guess that surprised me a little bit. I didn't realize that Wisconsin was so different than the rest of the nation. And so then the other thing that we talked about was this clean water initiative and the four conservation groups, well, three conservation groups and the DBA, they've actually been working together silently for 2 years. And we thought that when we saw the initiative come out in December of 2020, that was when they had decided that they could work toward clean water and resilient farms. They've been quietly doing it behind the scenes for over 2 years. They just made that public. So that was his presentation. Many of us have heard him speak a number of times before COVID when we were able to be in person, and it's a much more dynamic presentation. You can hear somebody in person. Our next speaker this month will be Professor Emeritus George Kraft from UW-Stevens Point, and he's going to talk about what's been learned over the past 30 years about nitrates in groundwater, phosphorus in lake and stream water, and not only in Portage County, where UW-Stevens Point is, but probably in the whole Central Sands. So I'm looking forward to hearing him. That would be Monday, April 19th, so it'd be in a week and a half or so. Obviously, we'll still be virtual then, but that's Professor George Kraft. And if you know his personality, things will probably get intense at that meeting.
Where is he right now?
Well,
Not just minutes,
he's
but I mean,
retired.
Huh?
He's retired, but
He's not working on the deal down in Lafayette? Was he working for the?
I don't believe so. I think that's Mark Borchardt and Ken Bradbury.
Okay, all right.
And I don't think George Kraft is involved in that right now.
Questions on the groundwater group?
Yeah, I just have one, then I'll be quiet. You said in there the best time to haul manure is in spring and fall.
I think that's what.
Who come up with that?
That came out of that Wisconsin Water Week presentation, and it was another professor at Stevens Point, I think it was Kucharik said that.
So we're gonna haul this manure in fall after the growing season is over. It can't be used up until spring. We put 50% on in spring and 50% in fall. We can't use that 50% until spring, till the new growing season. If I put half of that 50% on my alfalfa fields in June or July, you only got 25% to worry about being on the ground over winter. We got 75% used up over summer, but otherwise you only got 50% used up. The sooner you get that manure used up, the faster, the better it is, because there's less chance of it going into the ground or running off. So that's, like I said, that's an issue I had with it, because the farmers you talk to, we gotta get as much down in the summer as we can to the value of our crops in our growing season. If we save it for 50% in fall, we can't use it till the following growing season. And what's gonna happen with that over winter? Run off, or where's it gonna go? So that's, that's what, how it is, so.
Yeah, I don't mean to defend Professor Kucharik, but I think what he's saying is you're looking at it from 2 points of view. Optimizing crops, which is what you just said, and then decreasing the amount of damage to our water resource. And I think that's what he said spring and fall.
I'm gonna see more damage by putting it on in fall and having that stuff running off all fall and winter than having been used up in summer. That 25% was that you put on your alfalfa field, it's gonna be gone. You only got 25% to cause damage in winter, where you have 50% otherwise. So that,
And I guess the 25%, I don't know where that's coming from.
anyway, that's
But
enough.
his name is Kucharik.
Jason, no, we're gonna change the agenda. Jason, you on? Grunenberg?
Yes, I'm on. Yeah. You hear me?
Gail just showed up.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's go back to the fair deal while we're jumping around here. That'll be on 58, the start of it.
Mr. Chairman, should I provide some?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, Dale. Earlier in the meeting, we did cover a little bit of the process that we were trying to use this year to release the funds for the fair. And I kind of, just went over the fact that we were looking for you to have or fill the application this year, get it approved after the fact, and then do one release of funds either today or maybe next month after a summary is provided on where, the junior fair is currently at as far as planning and expenditures for 2021. I guess with that, there were a few questions on the application regarding some of the numbers, why a few numbers changed over the years and things like that. So this might be a good opportunity for you to provide a summary of your application and then just open it up for questions to the seat committee.
Okay, well, thank you, and I'm glad I had this opportunity to meet with you. I saw where we were on the agenda, that's why I thought I had a bit of time to get here. Going through the list and what our expectations are as we're planning for the 2021 fair. The majority of our figures, I think, stayed relatively close with slight increases in them. And I think that the big question that you're looking at is the amount of labor. We had jumped, we were at $37.75 for labor. And the number that I have stuck in this year for labor is at $11,000, and that is just an estimation. Part of my reason for doing that is some of the changes that is taking place with UW Extension's help at the fair and not knowing where that might be. In the past, Extension has had probably 2 people on the grounds during the day, and being I'm having problems with getting volunteers, if I have to pay personnel to be there for 3 days, 2 people, 3 people, that's going to be an additional cost. Also, I have had an employee working on right now coordinating how the junior fair entries are going to take place. In the past, Extension has handled this solely. They have said that they will be willing to help with us and work with it again this year any way we can, but they are in a position where they might be downsizing what they can do there. The fair has a paid employee who handles all open class entries and processes all of that part of it, the placings and then the premium payments at the end. This is something that Extension has helped with in the past, and if we have to hire someone there, it's just speculation on my point as to what we might have to be doing there on labor costs and added personnel. In speaking with Jason and Extension, they are going to help us through this the best they can this year, and it's a work in progress, but it's something that as we move forward with the fair, it's going to have to be figured into junior fair expense. And how's it gonna be paid, which it all comes out of the fair proceeds to help pay it. So that figure I threw in there was a guesstimation, and that would be basically about it. I guess that is the biggest change in what we're looking at expenses moving forward. So I don't know if there are any questions or on anything else.
Here's my question, I raised the question about why the increase from 37 to 11,000, and you're making an estimate. Is that in proportion to the rest of the labor cost for all of the other items of the fair, or is that just your assessment for what's provided to the junior fair?
No, that is just figuring junior fair is what I'm figuring, and it might have been a high estimation, but I would rather err on the end of being high. Also, as I evaluated labor costs for junior fair in the past, my number that I've been submitting has been relatively low. The fair has been picking that up and paying for it, so that might be figured in there to an extent.
Go ahead, Bob.
I think the county as a whole is looking for a total cost of the whole fair, sometimes as a yearly report or something, because we're involved. Does it pay for us to put in that much money in the commission if the fair, I mean, that's why they're kind of interested in what the whole general fair does it every year, like an annual report to them.
Okay.
You know, because this way, like I say, we're putting that money, because of the pay, it's not the money to the commission. If we're losing it to the fair, you know, we're really spending two ways. You're only involved with the association, while the commission is still putting money into the fair.
Right. So you're looking for cost of the total fair?
Like an annual report for the year.
Our annual report, for the 2019 fair, expenses and everything, we were at $635,000 was the cost of that fair. That fair was able to, we had good weather, that fair was able to make a little bit of money, and it brought the fair back into the positive side. Since I was hired 4 years ago, we were taking $50,000 off the front of every year's fair to pay for last year's fair. When the 2019 fair was over, we were able to clear up all of our debt, and we had an account of zero owed anyway, and that's where we were at. So that helped lead into part of the reasoning for canceling the 2020 fair is we had wiped the books clean, that we didn't have any debt, and in looking at the chances of, we looked at some fairs that opened partially for 2020, and the additional costs and the amount of revenue that came in. I guess my question for 2020 to the board leading into our decision was, how much money do you want to lose? And that was when we decided to cancel the fair and hang on position that we were in. With the cancellation of the fair because of COVID, all of the entertainment contracts, all contracts and everything that we had signed, we were able to roll over into the 2021 fair. Where had we moved forward, those contracts would have all had to have been paid, and your grandstand shows and that type of thing would not have generated revenue to pay for them. So that's the decision we're in. So financially, that's basically where the fair is. We've been able to hold on through this year of not having a fair. With a lot of it was the agreement that we have in management with the city of Marshfield and taking it over. Winter storage was a big revenue for us. That along with several PPP loans to help pay for salaries. The fair is, for not having a fair, we're not rich, but we're not broke either. We've got a few dollars in the checkbook, which is something that my first 3 years here we did not have. So that's kind of where we're at. Does that help answer your question, Bob?
Yeah. Okay. it.
So you got PPE money, and you said loan, but the idea is,
Yeah.
I think that'll be forgiven. I mean, that's,
The first payment for salaries that we got, was a $15,000, that one was forgiven. And we've just been given another $15,000 PPP for paying for salaries.
okay. Cause you hear about the big the big thing altogether, and you don't break it down to where it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead,
Thank you,
Jason.
Mr. Chairman. To Dale's point, we're working together on
Yeah.
some of this administrative, or a lot of this administrative transition. I want to reiterate, there's a lot of rumors that Extension is pulling out of the fair. We are not pulling out of the fair. We're a valued partner. However, to Dale's point about administrative costs, so historically, prior to my time, we had a support staff. We had 3 support staff. Now we have 2, and it's actually less than 2 FTE. That was assigned, and in their job description talked about fair administration, fair book, fair entry, those sort of things. When I started, that position was vacant. When Hildy was chair, it was decided that, it wasn't the best use of those dollars. We had to funnel that to other things. So we're down in that position. And we used to have 2 4-H staff members. So we used to have Chris and Laura, now we have just Laura. So we're down 2 staff members. So when the work doesn't stop, it has to go somewhere, and it's time intensive. So we're working through this transition to, the fair entry system. It's in actually Dale's numbers. That's the program that's owned by the fair. We were managing it for the fair for many years, and now it's like we need to kind of reshift some things around. So I just want to throw that out there. We're not pulling out of the fairs. Staff will be at the fair. However, some of the things that Dale's talking about, increased costs, they're administrative costs that historically our office has taken on. We don't have the staff capabilities nor the resources to continue to do that long term. So we're working on a transitional plan with the fair that way.
Carly, we got Carmen leaving at 10:52.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, okay, Jason, you got about 7 minutes left here. I guess I'll throw out there releasing the money for this year. Do you go through that again, how you plan on doing this? I don't think Dale has to come back here again.
I wouldn't think so. I think, based on the conversation you've had, or the committee's had with him today, I think there's some understanding of what's happening this year. My thought was, it would make most sense to release all the funds in one shot prior to the fair. And I think right now would probably be a good time to do that, especially with COVID, in light of COVID and lack of funding that they're probably dealing with right now. I know in the past been talked about, doing 2 releases. I think that's not necessary. So I'd recommend that the committee today make approve the release of funds for 2021 junior state fair or junior fair.
I think the meeting room is muted.
Yeah. Ken, you're muted. If you could unmute the room, please.
I don't want to say it's the first time, but it's probably the most comprehensive financial report I heard from the fair. I always figured we lost money, which we probably did at some point. I think that report was, what the committee's looking for. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Jake with aye. Vote is unanimous. Okay,
And
thank you, Dale.
This is Carly. The meeting room is muted during the motion. Could you give me who made and seconded, please?
Okay, Bob Ashbeck with the motion to release the money, and Dave LaFontaine with a second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You got something else, Dale?
No, that is basically all I have. I want to thank you guys for working with us. It would be very, very difficult for us to proceed if you weren't, and I think it is a very, very beneficial program to our. Thank you.
I just would have a comment, Dale, and that is that we probably sometime in this coming year, whatever, be looking at putting a budget together for the following year. And it would be helpful when you fill out whatever your budget forms for, the request for that, if you would show what part of that junior fair is of your total budget and the plan like what Bob had mentioned, so that you can see where the junior fair fits into the overall running of the fair.
Okay. Yeah, that I can do.
Okay, nothing else? We'll go back onto the health committee report. Your head swimming or not? Are you exhausted
Mr.
all
Chair,
the water?
Ken, this is Lance. I have to jump off on the same meeting that Jason's gonna be on, so have a good rest of your meeting. Take care.
Okay.
This is Jason signing off. Bye, everyone.
Okay. We got all our water problems solved in Wood County? Could probably send you down to Juneau.
I wish I could tell you we did. So as far as the water goes, we're gonna be having an intern here in April. We have, most of the contact information for those that we haven't, sampled as far as the nitrates go. We're gonna be working on getting in touch with those folks, doing some outreach, and then we're gonna be doing our sampling program. Right now, as it stands, we're going to be focusing on the people that we haven't sampled, and just trying to get more outreach and get in touch with folks with the high nitrates to get them, aid and assistance in getting the RO systems. That's really our number one goal is locating the high nitrates and working with AGC and getting the RO systems to them. That's really where we're at right now.
Okay, you're not just water, I think your title is environmental.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, but that is our focus right now, and, as far as the water goes.
So, have you had any contact about the MOU in Juneau and Southern Wood counties, or any other action or anything that's happened? Or is that what you were referring when you were talking to the IROs?
Yeah, we did have a meeting, there was a meeting with AGC, and they're going to be continuing the program as far as picking up the cost, of the nitrate sampling. And then that's the goal is to find the high nitrates and get them the RO systems.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on that? And we started this deal, if you could make the meeting, that's fine. If you can't, just send me an email. At the start of this, we were trying to, and I think that's continued our collaboration between Land and Water and Extension and the Seed Committee, and we certainly want to continue that. We'll have to see where we are with, I'm sure we're going to come up with hot items in the future.
Yeah, and I have the calendar hold for the meeting. If I could somehow get the agenda and things sent my way, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. I'll talk to Lance about that, or not Lance, talk to Trent. And you want the seed pack?
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions for committee?
So can I back us up just a little bit? I know we bounced around a lot today, and I know there was a reason for it, but somewhere in between 8A and 8B sub I there, or sub I2. With Shane not being here this month, I guess he's in Florida for 2 weeks, I came into possession of a template resolution as far as county conservation staffing and funding in the governor's budget. And I'm just wondering if Wood County should be doing something to aid in that effort. Without Shane being here, I don't, kind of floundering a little bit as to where to go, but the governor had recommended $7 million bonding for cost sharing, $250,000 for producer-led watershed grants, the hiring of 15 positions out of UW-Madison Extension for agricultural agents, addressing climate change, all of those things in the governor's proposed budget. And then there's a series of joint finance meetings that are going on across the state from this Friday to Wednesday, April 28th. And I would think if Shane were here, he would say that we want to support all those efforts to keep funding at the level where it was, 2 years ago? So I'm not sure. I suppose, it's not on the agenda. I suppose we can't do anything, but this template resolution is pretty interesting. And I don't know if I got that from Shane or you, Mr. Chair, or who I got it from, but.
Which one are you talking about?
Well, it looks like this.
I guess the best I can tell you is to put it, call it, when he's gonna be back the middle of the month. Put it on the next agenda.
Yeah, with joint finance meeting the last time on the 28th of April, it may be too late, but I guess there's nothing we can do about it now.
If they do anything.
I know, I asked Lori.
Could we move that to before county board, if that's something you want to take up?
We'd have to have the wording of the resolution and everything in place, and it wouldn't have came out of this committee. I asked Lori on the phone yesterday if it was kind of an oversight that nobody was dealing with that. It seems like it's coming to a head right now, and we're gonna miss it, but it's not on the agenda. I don't know how to handle it.
I don't think you could take any action on,
Okay, I just wanted to bring that to the committee's
But
attention.
I don't think it would be, you're making an assumption that committee is gonna, I understand it's supposed to act, but the budget isn't approved most of the time. They always say it's supposed to be approved, May or
It may be
May or
August.
June, and it's always well into the year, before it's.
So maybe you as chair could bring that to Shane's attention, that if there's something we should be doing then in May, that we would at least have the wording of a resolution. I have this template resolution that I just showed you.
Alright.
It's all marked up, but I think it's still usable. And then before we leave item 8, there's a couple other.
Okay.
So the 8B3, the Central Sands Groundwater County Collaborative, there I just wanted to make everybody aware again that we did get that. It's nearly $60,000 grant. And so that was something we weren't sure we were gonna get. It seemed like we waited 7 weeks longer than we thought we were gonna have to wait, but we did get that. And then there would be a little bit I'd want to report on the Golden Sands RC&D last meeting too, if that pleased the chair.
Yeah.
Okay, so at Golden Sands meeting of about, let's see, it was 3 weeks ago. It was Thursday, March 18th. One of the things that should be on everybody's radar is that you'll remember back 2-3 years ago, there was a NR 151 update that was tried in 17 counties of northeastern Wisconsin and found to be quite successful as far as reducing pollutants in groundwater. That is set to go statewide now. We should be hearing more about that at any moment. And I think there's $80 million worth of healthcare costs that could be affected if we can reduce the nitrates in groundwater. So there is an NR 151 update rule that you should be hearing about from, I think, DATCAP in the very near future. We talked about that. Another thing from Golden Sands from Thursday, March 18th was the 13 water bills that were introduced, passed almost unanimously in the Assembly a year ago and then never taken up by the State Senate in March. We believe many of those bills will be reintroduced. I know Katrina Shanklin is working really hard.
Part of that's this, part of that is expanding the staff of land and water. It's in that 10 million. But I got another question for you outside of the RC&D.
Yep.
The 60,000 that the collaborative group got, who's holding that? If you got
Right
it
now,
yet?
if Nancy's still on, I think, yeah, she is still on there. The last thing, Nancy, did you want to explain that? You said you and Ken Bradbury, is that right?
Yeah.
Are working on that right now?
So because of the grant requirements, needing the submitter to be part of UW, I am on paper the PI for that project and am responsible for managing those funds. But that being said, the postdoc or person doing the work will be hired through Wisconsin Geologic and Natural History Survey, which is Ken Bradbury's organization. So when we're ready, I will transfer those funds to him for his use. That's to hire a person and for their travel expenses, because they'll be going to each of the counties, visiting with the county cons and health department people to find out what kind of data they have and information that person can use in developing these larger data sets to identify what we know about the groundwater quality in the area and where we are lacking information. The other piece to this is a lot of outreach. And the three core people working on this at this point are Ken Bradbury, Jen McNally from Portage County, and myself. So we also need to get the outreach piece identified. That's all going to be in-kind money, and we're going to lean heavily on the county land conservation and health department people and other extension people to make that piece happen. I'm scheduling meetings with them right now. And the third piece of this is we will be identifying a technical advisory committee that will provide guidance to the postdoc. And Jen and Ken and I are identifying people that that represent a variety of organizations that have data, such as USGS, John Exo from Extension, people from UWSP, people from the Ag Research Station. So as many of those organizations that can provide technical expertise for this person will be part of that advisory.
All right.
So a lot of in-kind, and that, in addition, DATCAP asked us to consider compiling information about neonicotinoids as well as nitrates. Those negotiations are in process right now. We have a fairly clear understanding that it's not an enormous undertaking for this person to pursue, whoever gets hired. But that would be roughly an additional $8,000 that we would need to make that, to hire that person for an additional 1 to 2 months to get that piece included as well. And we're hoping to hire said person who's doing the bulk of the work by July 1, but we'll see how that goes. Sometimes hiring processes can have hiccups along the way.
Okay,
So I think I neglected to mention that there is another meeting of the Central Sands Groundwaters County Collaborative, Monday, April 26th at 10 in the morning. It'll be a virtual meeting, but we'll pull a lot of what Nancy's just talked about together at that time, or at least try to.
okay.
That was Monday, April 26th, 10 a.m. virtual.
So any questions about the committee reports? Okay, we made it all the way down to extension.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple updates. The general update, I have a handful of things to just kind of update you on under our general office update. Effective April 1st, our programming numbers in light of COVID protocols has been adjusted. So as of April 1st, given the positive trends for vaccinations, the positive trends, well, I mean, some would say that they're going in the opposite direction now, but very positive trends of infection rates. Staff can have in-person programming up to 50 indoors and 150 outdoors, which allows for us to engage, have our 4-H clubs start re-engaging in their club, town hall spaces, clubhouses. Schools are slowly letting, and again, I'm not saying Wood County specific, but schools are slowly letting some external groups come and use their spaces again, which is a transition for us then. So that is effective April 1st through the end of May. Summer numbers, again, if things continue as they are now, my guess is those numbers will be expanded for summer programming, which will allow for our overnight camps to potentially go. No guarantee yet. But so day camps are a go for sure. There's longer durations during the day, but overnight experiences are still kind of up in the air. And as we work through those protocols. So a lot of positivity happening right now with our programming numbers and in-person capacities changing there. With in-person programming, the dean, along with the leadership, has said that by July 1st of this year, our organizational telecommuting will end. So by July 1st of this year, all staff will be back in the office as their primary office location, and our organization-wide telecommuting will cease at that time. So over these next 3 months, staff have an option to start working back in the office environment as much as they would like, up to full-time, of course. And we know that there are staff that are still in some positions where they're not able to come back to the office at 100% because of childcare issues. Maybe their school is not in person full time any longer, or haven't ever made that point. I mean, there are some districts that are that way. Some childcare facilities are still not at capacity, so they're not able to do that. So also vaccinations. Some of our staff have not had the chance or had the access to get vaccinated. So a lot of these moving pieces. So kind of a 3-month window to sure up finer details, and staff will be back 100% in the office come July 1. We're still holding that our Tuesdays and Thursdays are open office hours. However, today Carly and I are there, so the door is open, and so we're starting to move that pendulum again to adjust that as staff are there. So some changes, again, positive changes to report as we continue moving forward with our programming and our accessibility for in-person walk-ins, which are still very minimal. I have to be honest, like even though we market that we're open, you can drop on by, it's sparse still. I mean, it's still sparse in the courthouse period, right? So at least from our aspect of things. The biggest thing we're having right now is soil samples. That's the biggest thing. People want to, frost is out of the ground. People want to get their soil samples done and taken care of. So, any questions on those two items? All right, some other general updates. One of it actually that I had written down that we talked about with Dale was the fair update. So we're working with Dale and his office on the transition of the fair entry system. As I told you before, our office has been a primary driver of that, and that is a very time-intensive software that we've been managing on behalf of the fair. We're working with them to transition that. They signed the contract, and basically then they handed it over to us to manage. So we're starting to kind of move in that other direction to train them up so they can manage their own process and their own systems. So that's an update there. I think on a sad note, a very profound 4-H leader and volunteer and a fair volunteer, Jerry Lang, passed away. I think it's out there now. He died tragically as a result of a fire early this week or during the weekend. So I know that is something that the program has been mourning right now is his involvement. I mean, he has had some profound impacts on the 4-H program and youth in Wood County. So, keep his family in your thoughts if you wouldn't mind. And who knows what will happen come this fair with he's got a building named after him at the fair. So, I mean, he's a pretty profound gentleman and may he rest in peace. Lastly, for kind of a general office update, so you have in your packet, and it's in the board packet, it's kind of the educator updates, kind of the monthly reports. I have pushed forward Wood County as being a pilot site for a new monthly reporting process. So as you can imagine, you go county by county, right? And there are 72 different ways that county oversight committees get information from extension. Some are written reports, some are only oral, some meet every quarter, some meet every month. And so what the state is trying to do is saying, no, you all as county supervisors need this information, and let's make it less work for the educators. We already have a centralized system for staff to put in information about their programming and the results of their programming, narratives and those sort of things. So why not use that data for the betterment of everybody instead of having to do the work 4 or 5 times? Do it once, and we can just pull reports and make some stuff. So I project at the next meeting or the subsequent one after that. I'm not quite sure on how this is going to work on the timing. Actually, the staff and I are meeting next week with his name is Christian. He's out of our central office. He's going to be training the staff on how to pull this data. I'll be working with Carly to generate those reports. But it may take a month to get the kinks worked out. But I'm projecting either next month or the month after, you will see a different layout of the report in your packet. And I think you'll find it very beneficial to, instead of seeing you see in your packet, like staff attended this meeting or they attended that meeting on that day. Well, that's great. But what are the cumulative results of attending those meetings? What are the outcomes that we're seeing? Not just attending a meeting, but what are the things that are happening? What's the evaluation of that? And this new report will aim to get at that and show it to you in black and white of let's just call it the return on investment for extension services outside of it just attending meetings. But here's some of the bigger picture pieces. So just want to get that on the forefront before you see that in the packet. That's where things are at. Again, it's a pilot. I think I've seen great results. Fond du Lac County's been doing it. Other counties have been doing it. And I think it's going to be a great way to help staff out, but also to help you all kind of know what's going on. So that's what I have under the general update. Unless there's questions, I'll keep moving forward. All right, so the next one is the 2022 fee structure, and I wanted to bring this to your attention as soon as I got the information. I don't have a document for you today because I don't have the final numbers right now. So what I've learned over the past 2 to 3 weeks is that with a lot of things, with budgets, there's always adjustments, there's always examination of that. So last year on the contract, the co-funded positions, if you remember, was $42,330 for a co-funded position. We currently have 2 of those. So Allison's position is part of the co-funded, Matt Lippert is a co-funded, and Jackie Caratini are the co-funded educators. The rest are either half-time, so Rachel is a half-time paid by the county, and I can get through that. I guess the bottom line is that because of adjustments and preparing for the unknown, I'll just call it that way, preparing for the unknown, the organization is planning, even though to Supervisor Lightnum's understanding or acknowledgement, even though there's 15 positions outlined in the governor's budget, we'll see what actually makes it in the final approved budget, right? So we are cautiously optimistic, but need to plan for the worst, right? So even if our base budget holds, and I'm paraphrasing the conversation, even if that holds, we have incidentals that have risen up. So health insurance premiums have went up. I mean, things that just happen with HR over time, right? So the co-funded positions will go up about $1,200 per FTE. So that's around $2,500 for those 2 co-funded positions. However, what they're doing is also removing the professional development line item in the contract, which totaled $2,500. So that may be a wash. This does not include the other educators' costs. So I ran the numbers, and if things don't change with some of these things, I project a $4,000 increase in contracted services. Even at that, we're still under where we were 3 years ago for contracted services. So I hope by the next meeting I can actually have some documents in front of you just to kind of see how this is going to shake out. But I wanted to bring it to your attention as soon as I got the word. I hate, I never like myself to get blindsided by something like, hey, I wish we would have known that a couple of months ago when you had the, right from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So I'm giving you that heads up today with more information to come. Again, I'll just call it fuzzy math and stuff that I've done over the course of the last couple of weeks is correct. It's about a $4,000 increase, give or take. We're going to manage that internally. I don't project that we're going to have to come back to the county and say, hey, we need more money in light of the shortfall that the county's had. That's not my intent. I'm just letting you know that will look different. So I think I mentioned that to Chair Curry via phone, but just wanted to bring it to the body's attention that there'll be some adjustments.
Carly? Carmen come back at 11:20.
My meeting was short.
Well, it might not be a bad year for, I don't think, well, let's put it this way, I don't wanna promise you something we can't, but I don't think this year's budget is gonna be as dramatic as last year's budget. I don't know if we're flush with cash, but there's a lot,
Yeah.
They got 14 million coming from the feds and God only knows what the state, how that's gonna be split up, so.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I think that's where, I think that's what we as AEDs are feeling. But again, at the same time, it's also sustainability, right? So we make the change now. If we have to incur another increase next year, and what does that look like, and trying to manage that internally, I just wanted you to be on the forefront of, hey, these are some of the adjustments that are happening, and here's why. Inevitably, you look at even the county having to make adjustments every year about insurance premiums went up, or they went down. And I think over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, they've said our premiums have went up and these sort of things have went up. And so we have to split that cost. So for each co-funded position, we have to look at maybe a $1,200 increase in that way. So that's what they're doing for, again, they're increasing the co-funded ones, but then removing the PD. 2023's budget, we may see another increase. I can't predict the future, but I just wanted you to be aware of that.
Okay.
Questions on that? Otherwise, I will hand it over to Allison or Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Allison, it sounds like we're ready for you.
Fantastic. Do you guys have a way to see my screen? I'll go ahead and share some slides. So I've got a couple photos if you can.
Yeah, we can see you.
Perfect. Let me share my PowerPoint. So I know it's been a few months since we've checked in, and I've now been at an extension for a year and 6 days, and so it's feeling pretty good to have my anniversary, and really looking forward to being more and more in person as Jason was saying, as our restrictions get lifted and hopefully the numbers keep going the right way. Wanted to just kind of talk quickly about what I've been doing the last 6 or so months since we've talked. You're probably familiar with thinking of the winter as the off season in agriculture, but that the fact that the cranberries are hibernating does not mean that we're not doing a lot of work. There's a lot of outreach that's going on in the winter. And through all of this, feel free to raise your hand or ask a question. I'm happy to talk more about things that are more interesting to you, and skip over the things that are less interesting. We're doing a lot, so I can talk about whatever's most cool. Just to kind of go over a little bit of background, for the last 6 months, we've been doing both a lot of virtual outreach. So every month that isn't harvest, we've been having a virtual brown bag, which is kind of a lunch meeting. The last Friday of the month from noon to 1, we'll have people come, and I'm having between 50 and 150 attendees. And I'll go through the topics that we're working on. I've been doing video interviews, and those video interviews are getting 160 to 310 views, especially when they're time sensitive. I'm really proud to see that like more than half of the views are on the first day. Like we really have, impactful information that people, if it's about a cold snap, people are like, ooh, I really need to know about this cold snap. Continuing to do traditional outreach as well. Marsh visits when we have troubleshooting has been less frequent in the winter, of course, but we'll pick up again in the coming thaw. The Cranberry Crop Management Journal has risen up to 372 recipients, and continue to get good feedback about that. Traditionally, the pesticide applicator tests, a lot of people had their, if you were going to have expired in 2020, DATCAP pushed out your expiration until 2021 because of the difficulty of testing in person under physical distancing restrictions. So we've mostly been running tests for people who are new employees who had never taken the test before. But we're doing that, and we're getting those people capable to do their applications in accordance with DATCAP and everything.
I got a question on your
Absolutely.
virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the total for all your virtual, or is that per virtual?
Per virtual meeting.
And you won't have any history outside. You've only done virtual, right?
Correct. There's a couple things.
How is that being accepted by your attendees? Those are the owners or the growers or the staff who?
It's so, and that's part of the reason for the fluctuation between 50 and 150. The ones that have been more like 50 have been the business owner ones, where there are just fewer people that are focusing on SWOT analysis and strategic planning. And then the ones that have more like 150 attendees are the ones that are more agronomic focused. And that's what we do, of course, during the growing season. But when we're talking about management of cold temperatures, when we're talking about, oh gosh, the blunt-nosed leafhopper has returned to Wisconsin, those are where we'll have the 150 crowds.
Do you have a sense how it's being accepted by these attendees? I've
gotten really good feedback. We are basically, so I work real closely with the Growers Association, and they have an education committee, but there's also just a really good, strong rapport of communication among the cranberry growers. And what we've kind of settled on, in the past, we used to have an in-person spring mini clinic in April, and we used to have the in-person summer meeting in August, which is often held at a marsh, and this year it's going to be held at Whittlesey Cranberry, which is in Wood County. And then we used to have the Cranberry School, which was in January. And what the community of growers have basically said is we want to, since we started having these virtual brown bags, it's it's an hour, but it's a really, really valuable hour. And they've requested that we keep having the virtual brown bags even after COVID restrictions are over. When COVID restrictions are over, we're going to go back to having the in-person summer meeting and the in-person Cranberry School. But they want to keep the mini clinic virtual, and they want to continue having the virtual brown bags once a month.
One more question. They're obviously not all Wood County. Those are all Wisconsin, or is there out-of-state people attending this?
I have just put in here the Wisconsin attendees. There are out-of-state, like researchers from Rutgers have attended, or British Columbia, people who are doing fungicide research trials, that kind of thing. But I just put in our Wisconsin attendees here.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so so I was just going to go over what the topics were. And so November was winter hardiness, and we had both UW physiologists, Amaya Atucha and Joshna Debimura, speak about their research on going into dormancy, and then also had a grower panel. And that featured a Wood County grower, a Rusk County grower, and a Vilas County grower. So we had the kind of the weather extremes across the growing community represented. In December, we had a national research roundup. So I put a screenshot from that there, where we had one of the things that happened in Wood County this year was the blunt-nosed leafhopper, which had been a pest of some interest like 20-ish years ago, hadn't been found in a long time and was found again this year in Wood County. That's an important pest because it vectors a disease. And so we've been doing a lot of catching up and understanding. We haven't been paying close attention in 20 years, but New Jersey has continued to have that problem for the last, it's in their recent memory and their current playbook. So we've been connecting with New Jersey a lot to get our guys up and ready to face this new pest. And so, that we had also a UMass person on physiology and an ARS person on some plant diseases. So they spoke with us in December. January, we had our Cranberry School, review of 2020 research results. February, and these are kind of the ones that are more owner focused. And since I kind of asked the growers, well, okay, if everything's frozen, what do you want to learn about? They said, how about strategic planning? How about business management? So I've worked with both extension and with industry to present about SWOT analyses and succession planning. That was well received, but had kind of the smaller, mostly owners audience. For March, we did ACING, worker protection safety inspection. So from time to time, DATCAP will visit marshes or visit farms and make sure that the workers have been properly trained and informed about safety, especially around pesticides, but also enclosed spaces and any other farm hazards machinery. So we wanted to make sure that our growers felt prepared if they were to ever receive an inspection. They kind of know what are the checklist of things that the workers need to be trained on. And then also I went over respirator fit tests because, again, usually people can go and have those performed. This year, most people are going to do them on farm. So I made sure everyone knew how to go through the respirator fit test, which is the little, like a bitter solution that you have to make sure that you can't smell as the worker grimaces and smiles and speaks and everything. And then coming up in April next week, we'll have our spring mini clinic, which is the forum for, kind of Q&A going into the growing season. I'll have 6 of the UW specialists present, and then also have a lot of Q&A sessions. So that's kind of our past, our past and recent and upcoming. And then, of course, through the growing season, everything will be kind of dynamically, we'll set the agendas based on what we're seeing in the field and what people have questions about. And then, so the YouTube videos and the video interviews have been something that's been pretty cool. When I've gotten questions repeatedly from growers, if I get 2 or 3 phone calls in a week about a topic that's the same topic, I will ask one of our specialists to do a video interview. So I had a couple questions, this cold hardiness for the October cold snap. This was, some people were even still harvesting, and a bunch of people were saying, how do I do this? That video interview with Amaya it was like more than 200 views in the first day. And so I also really appreciate about these that we'll get the information out there. It is reusable from year to year. And so when I have questions in the future about what do I do with this really early cold snap, I can say, here's this video interview. If I have new ones, and I intend to kind of grow this set of information across time. Yeah, any questions on that?
You get involved with Portage County too?
Say again?
You get involved with Portage County?
I have a couple of growers in Portage County, yes. And basically what I'm doing, I have a list of all of the growers that Matt had worked with, and I've been adding to it, working with the Wisconsin State Cranberry Growers Association, and also just word of mouth. Like if there's a cranberry grower in Wisconsin, they are my audience. So I'm not excluding anybody based on county.
Because there's that marsh down by Lake Dubay, in Portage County. It's a big marsh. By Lake Dubay, there is the big marsh in Portage County.
Oh, Dubay, yes. I do work with them.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. And it's kind of funny too, in a world where I hadn't started during COVID, I would have driven around and met everybody and toured everybody's marsh is like the very first thing that I've done. And since that wasn't in the cards, I know everyone's name, but I don't necessarily have the geography for them yet. And I'm really looking forward to getting people nailed down with locations. That's gonna help everything feel a lot more holistic. So into that, in my upcoming projects, I just was able to pick up my fleet vehicle on April 1st. So now I'm able to do travel in a little less paperwork full way. So we're going to do continuation of all of the outreach that I talked about. So there's the summer schedule of brown bags. I'm going to continue to do video interviews. I'm going to continue with the Cranberry Crop Management Journal, which is published every 3 weeks with articles from crop consultants and research specialists and some like grower updates. We're going to do a cranberry short course, which as cranberry growers are hiring more people who maybe didn't have a cranberry background before. So, as with the, closure of the Verso mills has made a few people who are, good, excellent, hard workers needing places to work, but don't have a lot of cranberry background. We're going to make kind of a 10 video course teaching someone who is a capable worker or a good mechanic about cranberry basics, so that when people make new hires who aren't in the industry, they'll be able to go through it. So we're going to be starting that project today, actually. I'll also this year be doing a lot of research, both specialist guided and focused in soil health. So for the specialist guided, I've got 3 main projects that are weed management focused. I put over here a screenshot from ARM, which is a software that Josh with your IT department helped me install, and I appreciate that. It's been real fun learning a brand new software. But we're going to be doing weed management studies, both pre-emerge and post-emerge, in order to try and keep weed pressures low and cranberry yields high, as well as looking at plant growth regulators. So after someone renovates a bed and they put in new plantings, there's a couple of years where you don't necessarily have a very strong crop because the vines are still filling in. So we're going to look at using plant growth regulators to fill in those vines more quickly to establish a strong cranberry canopy without weeds, and hopefully a good establishment with as few weeds as possible means reduced herbicide applications in the future. So that's the weed management. And again, feel free to pop in with questions as things go. Also, in terms of insect management, that blunt-nosed leafhopper that I mentioned that has been found in Wood County again, we're going to do control trials both pre and post bloom. Last year, those were found right at bloom, which is very stressful because you can't apply insecticides during bloom because you care about bees more than anything else. And so we kind of had to like wait and have our our knuckles turning white, waiting for the moment that the bees were done and we could get rid of those leaf hoppers. So we're going to look at pre-bloom and post-bloom trials for those. We're also going to look at flea beetle control, which is a pest that shows up late July and then all throughout August. And that one's a stressful pest because of the basically because of pre-harvest intervals. It's really hard to do late season treatments because you don't want any residues to remain in the cranberries for harvest. So we're looking at various management that are kind of like reduced risk for that. We're looking at one native nematode that predates on the flea beetle larvae, and so rearing and spreading those nematodes. So lots of exciting ways to try and get a handle on this pest that's been hard to get a handle on otherwise. We're also going to be doing growing degree day trials for Sparganothus fruitworm. And so that's a pest that we know what chemicals work against it, but we want to have the most effective applications possible. And the goal is, since it has a pretty tight life cycle, to target, hey, when in this life cycle are we going to have the most effective treatment? So again, we can, instead of having to do 2 treatments that both worked halfway, I just want to do 1 treatment, put out as little product as possible to have the intended effect. So looking at how we can time the treatments with their growth cycles. And then for disease management, we're going to look at control of fruit rot, which has been the most prevalent disease for the last several years. And we're looking at both traditional methods and reduced risk methods, which are microbial modes of action instead of chemical. And then we're also going to look at use pattern evaluation trials. And so that's going to be, instead of just one chemistry, looking at trials combining multiple different active ingredients so that we're kind of hitting from multiple places at the same time in order to have more complete treatment is the question. Is that going to work for us? So those are the specialist guided research. I also received a mini grant working with Extension and USDA and CALS at the University of Wisconsin. And we got awarded funding to do basically these really comprehensive lab analysis of basically how many microbes live in per cubic inch of soil. And we're going to do PLFA analyses to find out, what kinds of things live there. So we have funding to do 5 marshes, and we're going to focus all on upland marshes this year. So the kind that are common in Wood County. And we're going to ask these 5 growers, show me a bed that's very strong and a bed that's very weak, despite being similar age, similar drainage, and the same variety. And we're going to take cores from the edge and from the middle of that strong bed and of that weak bed. We're going to run this really comprehensive set of analyses to find out what might be differences between these 2 beds that look the same but have different results. So we want to encourage, we want to find out what soil ecosystems are resulting in getting good yields with less fertilizer applied, and that kind of thing. So this is kind of a foundational analysis. It's mostly going to be pull a bunch of cores, look at the results, and then see what patterns can we figure out here. Are there patterns? Are there things that are worth looking at? There's a lot of interest in the growers toward having good soil health and toward having good water quality. So this is just kind of a foundational project on that we were pleased to get a little funding from SARE to basically handle the direct cost of that. So that those are the the research projects that are combined with all of the outreach that I've been doing and will continue to be doing. Any other questions? Anything that you've heard that you want me to focus on, or any other input?
Yeah, Bill's got a question.
Yeah,
Sure.
Allison, I don't know if you're going to be able to help with this or not, but a couple of chemicals that are used, I believe, with insects, 2,4-D and glyphosate. Are you familiar with either of those?
Both of those are herbicides, I believe. So glyphosate is the one that's normally known as Roundup. That is actually, and both 2,4-D and glyphosate are not really used in cranberries because they hurt cranberries just as much as they hurt the weeds. So like
Let me ask,
go ahead.
Ask this question then. If they were used within a quarter mile of an organic cranberry marsh or regular cranberry marsh, would that be dangerous to the grower?
I don't know, but I would have to look up the specific distance setbacks that need to be maintained from organic production. It is true that if a non-organic herbicide is used on an organic marsh, then yeah, that organic marsh would have its crop, would lose its organic certification. I'd have to look up. It probably varies a little bit depending on who the organic registrar is, where their cutoffs are. But certainly, if there was to be a detect, if they were to find residues, that would be disqualification, and that organic grower would have to then invest 3 more years into becoming organic again.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
They couldn't get you a cranberry colored car?
Even more than a cranberry colored car, what I really would have liked was a pickup truck. But we'll take a minivan. I'm on the wait list for a pickup for next year.
Dave?
Kudos to you, Allison, for your presentation on WDLB the other day.
Oh, thank you.
You did an excellent job. Your enthusiastic presentation was very, very well noted, and I was kind of surprised and heard toward the end that Jeff said they didn't allow any people to call in. He got so many questions answered from you, and they were very, very pertinent questions that I think that the general public would want to know. And also that the university president has said that one of his temporary, I guess, leader has said that he'd like to see the university do more for the people of Wisconsin. You're fulfilling that very abundantly in what you're doing and being involved with helping out the people in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. That's the best praise I could possibly receive. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here and so glad to be working with cranberry growers and Wisconsin in general. And yeah, it's lovely. Thank you.
She's the only one, right?
Correct. So I appreciate that.
You're the best one there is, right?
Well, but
Wow.
no. So here, it's the truth, though. So I think, and I actually reached out to Allison after yesterday's WDLB as well. To that very point, like Jeff didn't take any callers because he was so enthralled, and I think. So I want to just step back. I think what has transpired in the last year, even though Allison has mentioned that she's been primarily virtual, the response from the growers and from the Growers Association and other individuals that have seen the work that she has done in her capacity, really drilling into one subject and being a specialist, that has led to numerous other conversations, i.e. putting in the governor's budget 15 new positions, which the university would then utilize to create, I'll just say clone Allison in other facets too, because of the impact that it's made, not just locally in the home county, but also in the industry. So she has really ramped up what our organization can be offering, and it's being replicated in other facets of our organization. And one thing I haven't talked about, which because we're not ready yet, but Allison knows this, so it's the Ag Institute, which she's a part of, is going through a kind of evaluation of where staffing is. Are we really meeting the diverse needs of the state with our current staffing structure? And with limited resources, can we do more if we adjust our staffing plans? And so it's just some conversation for the other day. Chair Plimo, I know he's not on the call right now, But the Ag Institute director, Heidi Johnson, and the Ag Dean, Patrick Robinson, presented at the WCA Executive Board meeting about where extension ag staffing may be heading 2021, 2022, 23. And what I gathered from Heidi was that Lance and other WCA reps on that board thought it was really good. I mean, so the analogy that was shared, and I don't know who shared it, was either Kirk Gibbs or Lance or somebody's like, you know, when you have an issue with cranberries, per se, it's no different. You want to go to a cranberry specialist. No different than if you have an issue with your heart. You want to see a heart specialist. You want to see a family practitioner, right? And so, how can we create more cranberry specialists or dairy specialists that can really drill down deeper to meet the needs of those that are currently in the industry versus somebody that's maybe a generalist that is like a family practitioner sort of thing. I mean, just some of those different modes of thinking about what we can do. And I think you've seen it here locally too with Rachel, right? I mean, in being able to drill down deeper, yeah, I mean, we may lose some things on the periphery, but again, it's what's the return on investment? Can we drill down deeper to maximize outcome? So that's a longer-winded response, but I do appreciate that support, and I reached out to Allison yesterday as well about that because I listened in as well. So.
One other comment, I think that work like what Allison is doing is making it a lot easier to sell the Wisconsin program from the university, what is saying the university program. And I think for the president of the university, it makes him easier for him to go to the state legislature to get funding to benefit the people of the state of Wisconsin without having all of these hassles and things and trying to cut down the university program, which I think has been a real problem here in the state.
Okay, I think that's it, Allison.
Thanks, Allison.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
All right. That it for extension?
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the body.
Okay, we're down to 15. We can just about make before 12. Request for per diem. I'd like to request one per diem for I expended a lot of hours with the Buren deal.
Motion.
So Bill Lakeman with a motion, Carly, for per diem for me for the Buren licensee group, Lisi. Dave with a second. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Jake. Any other person that attended any meetings or schedule the next meeting? The next meeting is May 5th, Wednesday, May 5th. You're gonna take care of the room, Carly?
Yes, I've got 114 reserved and I'll send out the invite to everyone.
And next is agenda items. I've got, and what Bob brought up about paying for water testing or multiple paying. Lance had brought that up yesterday about houses that are sold. If you borrow money, you gotta have a water test. That water test is done by UWSP. He asked the question why we don't tap into that. I honestly couldn't. So I mean, I want Sean, whatever the hell his name. Shane to discuss that. I think we're utilizing it. I'm not sure that there's a database. They might do the testing, but is there a database of all the testing they've done across so many? We can't utilize something that isn't there. And then I got your template water resolution.
So I can. You talking the database at Stevens Point?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a database. There's a pretty comprehensive database.
I'm pretty fairly confident we use it. I mean, the question was, if we're doing this other testing, why aren't we just using that? Why are we expending more money? And I think that they can both work in concert to benefit us. But All right. If you got anything for agendas, it goes in on Wednesday, the end of April, 4/28.
Did one of the speakers that was virtual today request this committee to have an economic development meeting separate from?
Nancy did.
When was she asking? This month yet, or in May, or?
Well, I think she's got a lot of stuff, the way I heard her talk, I think she's got a lot of stuff we can bring forward, but I don't know about this month, but I will keep that.
Yeah, okay.
No other business to come before us, we'll adjourn at 11:55. Huh?
57.
57? 11:57, Carly.
There's some chocolate chip cookies that Bill Clendenning brought for me here that have been bothering me all the past 3 hours.